Hi, it's on, everything's working. I don't have much time, so I'm going to go straight into it. We're in the middle of a huge paradigm shift, as you guys know. And there's this new organizational paradigm that's really changing how we build companies, which you guys all understand. It's changing how we work, and then ultimately how we shape economies. And so I want to just go through this quickly. So I'm founder and former CEO of Zipcar, and it was through Zipcar that I kind of began to understand this shape. So I feel like we had three reasons why we had a high likelihood of success. The first is that we were leveraging excess capacity. And I think that's what's happening in the crowdsourcing world everywhere. So for Zipcar, I would say that there's two ways to consume a car. The first was that you could buy an entire car, which costs about 6,000 euros or $9,000 a year. The second most expensive thing people buy, yet we only use it 5% of the time, so it's idle 95% of the time. The second way you could purchase a car or consume a car was through car rental, and you have it in these 24-hour bundles. Is this not working? There's these 24-hour bundles, even if you want it for 2 hours or for 26 hours. So I knew that if I let people buy just what they wanted by the hour, I had a huge economic win because everyone was buying more than they actually wanted. The second thing we did is we built a platform for participation. If you think about car rental today, it's taking 30 minutes, and clearly if you're going to do it for just an hour, that was not possible. So we had to give the power of the organization, give it to the individuals. We had to bring them very closely attached straight to the product. And we had to make something that was very complex, this complex rental process of dead simple, which is what we also did. The third thing is that we thought of our customers as our members and our collaborators. And so again, if you think about car rental, we ask the customers to walk around the car and see if there's any damage. We give a fuel card in the car and say, when it gets to a quarter tank, please fill it up. So we had a totally different relationship. We asked our customers, what kind of cars, where to park them. And we really thought of them as our co-creators, our collaborators. And this photo, I love this image. These are people leaving the hospital with their firstborn children, and their instinct is, hey, wait a minute, let's take a photo and send it to Zipcar, which is I definitely did not think of that when I was leaving the hospital with my children. So it's these, this is a cartoon. Zipcar was founded in 2000, and this is a cartoon I just found last year. Moses coming down out of the mountain, and of course, is there a section at the bottom for comments? So even with God, we perceive ourselves as co-creators, and this idea of us being passive consumers sitting back is no longer a reality. And if you just think of this word customer or consumer, doesn't it sound kind of 1950s? Like, that is not at all how we perceive ourselves. So it's these three elements, excess capacity, people, and platforms, that are the building blocks for this new organizational paradigm. And I'm calling this Peers Inc., and it's people and platforms that are building this new collaborative economy and reinventing capitalism. All of these companies that we know we've talked about forever, all of these have this structure. And I threw down the side all these kinds of companies. You guys know this. I feel like I hardly even need to spend a second on this, but the free and open source movement is a peers and collaboration. Massive online open courses is a peers and collaboration. Bitcoin and blockchain, Yelp, OkCupid, all of these things are this structure. Excess capacity, people, and platforms. If I ever think about this idea of excess capacity, it's fundamentally an act of sharing, because you were saying you don't control that asset by yourself. You're having to share it. It's not only you that are using it. So excess capacity is fundamentally sharing. An example of this is bed sharing. I do a lot of bed sharing, and I imagine that you guys do too. And you think you know where I'm going, but we'll see. So when I travel a huge amount. And when I travel, I prefer to stay with friends in their multi-purpose excess capacity spare bedroom. It might be a home office and a bed. If I'm extra lucky, I get a double bed, which is really great. I like that a lot. If I'm incredibly unlucky, they told a teenager to move out. I'm having to sleep in that icky, dirty bed. And that is why we invented hotels, obviously, because hotels are bed sharing. When I did Zipcar, I would forbid my staff from calling it car sharing, because I said, A, no one knows what car sharing is. It's going to take another 6 sentences to describe it. And B, imagine if we called hotels bed sharing. No one would want to stay there. This idea of sharing has a lot of negative connotations. So And people think Zipcar is amazing. I think, wow, it's exactly the same business model as hotels, maximizing the asset over a 7-day week. So I went and did some research. The largest hotels in the world, the Intercontinental Hotels Group, in 65 years, had 650,000 rooms in 100 countries. And we know that was a lot of work because Hilton is number 2, and it took 93 years, and they still didn't get that number. And yes, you know what I'm going to say. Airbnb, in its 4th year, hit 650,000 rooms. And this is where I say, can you believe it? The world is transformed, but we can accomplish things like this in the same amount of time. And behind Airbnb is a revenue that matches that source. And Crowdsourcing, in 9 years, had 2.5 million places to stay. So the question is, why is this happening? And how can we repeat it? And let's understand the structure. So if we think, why did we ever invent companies and governments and institutions? We invented them to do things that we as individuals couldn't do. And so what are those things? Things that are going to cost millions of dollars. I can't do. Sorry about this, Mom. If I go here, it won't flip open and shut. Okay. So if you think about what could they do, if it's going to cost millions of dollars, I don't have millions. Is this hurting your ears? Is this good? If I don't have millions of dollars, so I'm going to have a company or an institution or government to do that. Also, if it's going to require lots of kinds of expertise and knowledge. As an individual, I'm brilliant at 2 things. If it's going to take 10 things, I have to put together a government or a company to do this. If it's going to be something that requires standards, as an individual, I can't force anybody to do things the same way. I don't have the ability to create those kinds of standardization. We need something with more lift to do that. And so all of these strengths are, they're global, and we think of them as sometimes are bound up in a reputational brand promise, as BlaBlaCar was talking about. On the other side, individuals have strengths that they do better than companies. And I would say those things are localization, customization, and specialization. Big companies can do these things. They hate doing them. It costs a lot of money. And if you think of the last 150 years of industrialization, it was all about ripping out the customized, personalized, and localized, and making these big standardized products so that we could get economies of scale and lower prices. Well, so of course, these 2 strengths are in fact very, very complementary. And now that the internet exists, the transaction cost from dealing with lots of small parts no longer is an issue. And so we have this brand new collaboration that's possible now that I'm calling Peers Inc. And it really is a fundamentally new collaboration that we couldn't have had before. The Inc. side, the larger entity, is delivering the platform for participation, and the peers deliver a diversity of offering. I want to simplify this, and it feels like it's like a yin-yang, where each side has to leave enough value on the table for the other side. It's very complementary and symbiotic, and it's all kind of swimming in the sea of excess capacity. So let me just go through this quickly. I love the idea of excess capacity because it's resource efficient, and as an environmentalist, I really care about resource efficiency. And as an entrepreneur and a business person, the cost-effective efficiency is really, really appealing to me. So how am I defining excess capacity? Something that already exists, already been paid for, but there's more value there. So I want you to think about it not just as physical assets which people are associating with a shared economy, but as every kind of asset: temporal, physical, networks, experiences, data. And so once you spy it, what do you do with it? The first thing that you would do is you could slice it, and that's what Zipcar did. It took a big asset and said, you know what, we'll let you just pay for what you want. You just get these little pieces. Or you would aggregate it, and that's what Airbnb did. It took a million little tiny spare excess capacity, put it all on one platform with a unified insurance product that only a big company could do, and a comparable way of communication and payment so people could compare and contrast. It has a wholly different flavor than a million bed and breakfasts. And the third and most exciting way to do it is to open it up and say, here's this excess capacity, what are your great ideas? And of course, the open data movement is the example of that. And so McKinsey did a study, 40 countries have opened up their data, opened up 1 million data sets, and McKinsey says, you know what, there's $3 trillion worth of value there. And so just think this was latent value, excess capacity that was stuck in servers someplace and in file drawers, and by opening it up with this platform of open APIs, we can invite in a whole bunch of people to think up brand new value to get out of it.
So if we talk about the Inc. part, the Inc. develops this platform for participation. And what is spectacular about platforms is their platformness. They organize small parts, they make complex things simple, and very importantly, they give the power of the large to the small. And meanwhile, we get all these economies of scale and have the potential for very high growth. Zipcar, their founder is a really good friend of mine, and I will talk about it a little bit differently. So today, Zipcar is, you guys are here before. So I'm in my car, access capacity 3 seats, Paris to Berlin. Today, they're moving 4 million people every month, which is the same as 10,000 trains or 10,000 planes, without, of course, having to lay a track, buy a rail car, buy a plane. And it has, what's interesting about these platforms is they have this very kind of signature curve. They launched in 2006. It takes a long time to get these platforms to work. It's incredibly high risk. Most fail. You have to iterate, and then when you finally get it to its maximum simplicity and its maximum desire, it has this potential for very high growth because everyone can go on simultaneously. The peers are delivering diversity, and I feel like this is the reason why this business model or organizational paradigm is so fantastic. It's the power of this diversity that really makes it sing, because it's the individuals in this diversity that brings the innovation and adaptation. And in addition, I love the resilience and redundancy that comes with this. And so my example here would be smartphones and apps. So the smartphone is a platform. It takes way more money, way more skill, way more standardization to build that smartphone. Yet we have smartphones were invented about 8 years ago now, and we've had over 2 million apps on top of that. And we've had this explosion of innovation because people are taking their own unique life experiences, their own sectors, and they're able to put their own personal diversity with a much lighter lift onto the smartphone. What could I do with this device with these types of attributes? And we now have 2 million ways. And so it's the power of this diversity. And in addition, I want you to think about the smartphone as I bought it for $600 for 3 or 4 killer apps. Every other app is a free rider on this. Most apps are not worth $600, and some of them are worth nothing. But that's the beauty of it. I can experiment and figure out what I want to do with this thing that's already been paid for. I'm thinking about time. I'm going very fast. So what I love about this organizational structure is that it has the power to deliver on these 3 miracles. Because it has these characteristics that are so phenomenal that I feel that they're quite miraculous. And to make you appreciate the miracles, I'm going to take you just 2 minutes through incredible, depressing thoughts, and then we'll come out and you'll appreciate the miracles more. The most depressing thing I think is climate change. And scientists tell us that we are, so if you think of the baseline temperature at 0, scientists tell us that we're going to go to 5 to 6 degrees Celsius by 2100. And we've already done 1 degree. The current goal with the last Paris Accord was 1.5 degrees average global warming. And so the real question, let me just go past this, is what does it feel like to warm a planet by that amount? And I think most of us are just not even thinking about that. So what does it feel like to warm a planet by 5 or 6 degrees? I went and looked and said, okay, the last ice age was 20,000 years ago, and it was minus 4 degrees Celsius from today. So to understand what it feels like to warm a planet by just 4 degrees, and we're talking about doing it at 5 and 6, just think about where we're standing, sitting right here, or in my bed in Boston, being under several kilometers of ice to today. That's the difference of warming at 4 degrees, and we're doing 5 or 6. So when scientists talk about this being a crisis or catastrophic, what they're really saying, and what they've internalized, is that everyone's going to be dead. Humans are really clever. We'll have a couple 100,000 of them. We will not have 7.5 billion. So I want to put this incredible urgency into your minds, and it's what's motivating me every day and why I'm actually here. So we have to deal with this. And my friend Bani Banerjee at Stanford says you can't solve exponential problems with linear solutions. And we have been approaching this problem in a very linear fashion. And so I said, you know what? Try Peirce game. And there are 2 of these miracles. Miracle number 1. Because we're leveraging excess capacity, we can defy the laws of physics. So if I go back to 2000, instead of inventing Zipcar, I would say, you know what? I'm going to build 650,000 rooms around the world and the largest hotel in the world. Everyone would have said, Robin, physically impossible. You can't go find the land. have an architect, finance it, build it, put the furniture in, hire the staff, have people come, never make any mistakes, do it right every time. Physically impossible. So here's what business as usual asset building would look like, and here's Airbnb's growth curve. And why? Because they were leveraging existing excess capacity and put it on a platform for participation and invited the diverse peers to participate. And so when I look at solutions to things like poverty, farming, education, and climate change, it has to take this structure if we want to move fast. Miracle number 2. Because we are building a platform for participation, we can have exponential learning. Learning is all about how many iterations you can get behind you. And if you think about yourself as an individual, you have your lifetime, and you think companies are going to learn faster than that. Platform companies or platforms learn faster still. My example will be how quickly do you learn a foreign language. The unit of measurement is what can you learn in a semester of a university, which is about 130 hours. It used to be that the Rosetta Stone was the best one in the world. It would cost a lot of money. If your boss were paying you to do it, because it was only 54 hours that they would promise you'd learn a semester of a language. So my new favorite company is Duolingo. When I talked to the CEO of Duolingo, he says he does A/B testing on every single question, and in 24 hours, he'll have 150,000 people take that test, and he'll know definitively which is the better way to instruct. And so he's got it down to 34 hours in which he will reliably teach you a semester of a foreign language. And why do I say reliably? Duolingo is just 3 years old now, and they are teaching 105 million people. And just think about, this was excess capacity. How Robin Chase learns and which she answers a question has been thrown out for 56 years. And Duolingo said, that's an interesting data point. Let me do something with that. Duolingo also opened up its processes, because you learn in language pairs what your native tongue is, what your foreign tongue is. A year and a half ago, they opened up their processes and said, hey, anybody, you can put your own language pairs on here. Of the 105 million, 50% are learning language pairs that Duolingo did not create itself. And they also have an amazing revenue. I'm going to keep going. Miracle number 3. Because we are working with a diversity of peers, the right person will appear. And I don't mean Superman. Like, Superman, so what? He's strong and he can fly. But it's like totally irrelevant. You guys here right now are stronger and better because you can have your smartphone and you know what's the weather there, what's the best traffic pattern, what's the best transportation to get there, what's the history of it, and who are the experts. But my example here will be back to Airbnb because it's just simple. In December 2014, Obama says the words, I think we're going to normalize relationships with Cuba. He says it in November. 6 months later, Airbnb has 2,000 listings in Cuba. Why? Because they're leveraging excess capacity on a platform for participation, inviting a diversity of peers. So the key thing to remember is that Peers Inc. is a collaboration. None of these miracles can happen without the collaboration. So we can't have exponential growth if we don't have the platforms organizing and unleashing the excess capacity and the peers co-investing. We can't have exponential learning if we don't have the hundreds of thousands of crazy ways individuals do things and the platform is paying attention and analyzing and saying, here are best practices, here are worst practices. The right person won't appear if you don't have the platform that's attracted us, that the peers have done are doing all these things in real time, and the platform says, here's the needle out of the haystack at this exact moment. So I feel we are profoundly moving from industrial capitalism to what I would call the collaborative economy, which doesn't have these barriers of, we're not using patents and trademarks and copyrights and certifications to say what's inside the company versus what's outside. We don't have those firm lines anymore. Are you using personal assets or private assets? Are you doing this residential or commercial? Is it my personal time or someone else's time? Who owns this data? Who owns these assets? It's a big, big mosh pit now. And so I'm going to give you 4 reasons why I am very sure we're moving away from the old industrial capitalist model, which the greatest value was extracted when you did have hard barriers. Today, the greatest value is extracted when you have shared networked assets. And so, 4 reasons that are all true. Shared networked assets always deliver more value than closed proprietary ones. And we know they do it 2 ways. 1, that assets used more efficiently, or 2, brand new value is extracted out of it. And if you think about people, more networked minds are smarter than fewer closed proprietary minds. We've known this for a long time. You're smart in this room, there's more smart people outside in the world. If they are networked and connected, we can tap that. If we think about about the size of the opportunity and benefits of shared open assets are larger than the problems associated with shared open assets. So if I think about when I did Zipcar, the people who did not invest would tell me, Robin, people are going to ruin those cars and they're not going to tell you about it. And you know what? A very small percentage of the population are jerks, and they do ruin the cars, and they don't tell us about it. It's a problem that's identified. We penalize them, they keep doing it, we push them out of the service. Meanwhile, 1 million people are sharing 13,000 cars parked across the planet. If you think about Wikipedia, people used to say, oh, you can't do it. It's going to be having, there'll be things that aren't true when people write graffiti on certain pages. But what's the reality? That is true. It's an identified problem. We can deal with it. But today, there are 4.8 million entries in the English language encyclopedia. So the benefits and opportunities of shared open assets are larger than the problems associated with them. And then lastly, I'm a very self-interested person. I only care about me. When I participate in one of these, I always get more than I give. So I've decided to do car sharing. I reserve 3 hours a month. I, Robin Chase, personally have access to 13,000 cars around across the planet. When I edit on Wikipedia, I personally have access to the world's knowledge. And so, for me, these 4 statements are true if we have a networked world, which we do, and we need to include everyone. So we're moving to a whole new world. And if I think about the world that we're living in right now, which has got climate change bearing down on us, the future of capitalism is incredibly uncertain, the future of work is uncertain. This is the structure for these dynamic times, because this is the only structure that enables us to experiment, iterate, adapt, and evolve to match the pace of this dynamism and of this transition. And yes, I wrote a book on this topic, and I want to say, I don't care if you buy the book, but these issues are really, really important. We are mid-flow in this incredible transition. And if we had time for Q&A, which we're not going to, you would be asking me questions about income inequality. Yes, it existed well before the sharing economy. We have to address it. We talk about labor. Yes, a huge issue. Anything that can become a platform is going to become a platform, so start paying attention. This is really climate change. If we don't deal with it, we're going to be dead. We have no time. We've got to build some platforms to deal with it. So these are issues that are dear to my heart. Crowdsourcing is part of it. Thank you.